How to stop over-bluffing in poker. Imagine sitting at a poker table, feeling the thrill of the game, but suddenly realizing your bluffs are not working as they should. Over-bluffing can turn your strategy into a predictable pattern, making it easier for opponents to call your bluffs. So, how can you stop this from happening? First, let's understand the basics of bluffing. Bluffing is a psychological tactic where you try to convince your opponents that your hand is stronger or weaker than it really is. A successful bluff can force opponents to fold weaker hands, allowing you to win without having the best cards. However, if you bluff too often, your opponents will catch on, and your chances of winning will drop. Next, it is essential to identify when you are over-bluffing. This happens when you bluff more than necessary. If you notice that your opponents are calling your bluffs frequently, it is a clear sign that you need to adjust your strategy. Keep track of how often you bluff and how your opponents respond. Now, let's talk about balancing your bluffing strategy. A good rule of thumb is to maintain a bluff-to-value ratio. This means you should bluff less often than you bet for value. This balance makes it harder for opponents to tell when you are bluffing versus when you have a strong hand. Reading your opponents is also vital. Pay attention to their playing styles. Bluff more against cautious players who tend to fold under pressure. On the other hand, bluff less against aggressive players who are more likely to call your bets. Position at the table plays a significant role too. Bluffing from a later position can be more effective because you have more information about how your opponents are playing. Use this to your advantage. Consider the pot odds and the risk-reward analysis when deciding to bluff. If the potential gain is not worth the risk of being called, it might be better to fold or check instead of bluffing. Practice selective bluffing. Focus on bluffing in situations where it is most likely to succeed. For example, if the community cards suggest a strong hand or if you are in a position to control the action, those are good times to bluff. In practical terms, stopping over-bluffing involves self-awareness and strategic adjustments. One effective method is to keep a bluffing journal. Record your bluffs and their outcomes to track how often you bluff and how successful those bluffs are. Observe how your opponents react to your bluffs. If they consistently call, it is time to rethink your approach. Adjust your strategy based on the dynamics of the table. By implementing these strategies, you can maintain a balanced approach to bluffing. This will help reduce the risk of over-bluffing and improve your overall performance at the poker table.